on your side.
Ha, sure.
There's something weirdly timeless about Hellboy, isn't there? It's got that early 2000s comic book movie vibe, part gothic fairy tale, part monster of the week, part action flick, but somehow it hits this balance between pulpy fun and genuine heart. Del Toro's fingerprints are all over it. The weird little creatures, the Catholic imagery, and the constant theme of outsiders trying to find where they fit in. And yeah, it is a little messy, a little dated in certain spots, but it does stick with you. So what is it about Hellboy that keeps pulling people back in after all these years? On the surface, Hellboy is a story about a demon raised by humans working for a secret government agency that fights the paranormal. It's a world of Nazi occultists, ancient gods, and things that go bump in the night. But at its core, it's about identity, choice, and what it means to belong. The movie follows Hellboy, a wisecracking, stone-fisted demon, as he faces off against dark forces while wrestling with who he really is. It leans into monster movie tropes, but grounds them with a surprisingly human heart. Hellboy comes from the mind of Mike Mignola, whose 1990 comic series was this mix of pulpy horror, folklore, and minimalist moody art. The comic stood out for their stark lines and mythic storytelling, more about mood and mystery than non-stop action. Guillermo del Toro, already known for Cronos and The Devil's Backbone, saw something in Hellboy that wasn't just comic book fare. He connected with the melancholy, the folklore roots, and the monster as protagonist angle. It wasn't just about adapting a superhero story, it was about preserving a certain atmosphere that Mignola had baked into the DNA of the character. Now, the road to making Hellboy wasn't exactly smooth. The comics had a cult following but weren't mainstream, and Del Toro had to fight for his vision, especially for casting Ron Perlman, who studios weren't convinced could headline a blockbuster. Plus, this was pre-MCU, when comic book films weren't guaranteed hits. But against the odds, Hellboy got the green light, backed by a director who genuinely loved the source material and wasn't afraid to make something a little stranger, a little darker, and way more sincere than most of what was hitting theaters at the time. When it came to casting, Guillermo del Toro wasn't budging on Ron Perlman. The two had worked together on Cronos and Blade 2, and del Toro basically built Hellboy around him, even refusing studio offers if they wouldn't back Ron Perlman as the lead. It paid off. Perlman brought this deadpan charm and subtle vulnerability that made Hellboy feel less like a cartoon character and more like a real complicated guy, who just happens to be a giant red demon. Alongside him, Selma Blair played Liz Sherman, giving a subdued but emotionally charged performance, while Doug Jones, with David Hyde Pierce lending his voice, embodied Abe Sapien, a mix of physical acting and voice work that gave the film one of its most iconic characters. Visually, Hellboy is a showcase of practical effects blended with early 2000s CGI in that very Del Toro way, heavy on texture, design, and physical presence. The creatures, designed by Spectral Motion, feel alive because most of them are practical builds or suits, not just digital effects. Even the sets, from the shadowy corridors of the BPRD headquarters to ancient crypts, have this tactile lived-in quality. Guillermo Navarro's cinematography leans into stark contrast with deep shadows, giving this film a sort of pulp noir meets gothic fantasy look that sets it apart from other comic book movies of the time. And yeah, some of the CGI hasn't aged perfectly, but it never fully takes you out of the world because the practical backbone is there anchoring it. On the music side, composer Marco Beltrami delivered a score that mixes orchestral weight with pulpy brass and eerie undertones, keeping that fine balance between comic book adventure and supernatural horror. One cool behind-the-scenes detail is that Del Toro actually gave the crew an informal monster bible, filled with folklore references and creature sketches to help unify the film's design language. It's that kind of obsessive attention to detail that makes Hellboy feel more than just another genre flick. You could tell this was a film built by people who really wanted to be making this movie, weird, heartfelt, rough edges and all. When Hellboy hit theaters in 2004, it got a solid but mixed response. Critics generally praised its style, creature work, and Ron Perlman's performance, but some knocked it for being too weird, too slow, or not fitting neatly into the rising wave of superhero blockbusters. Audiences liked it, though maybe more in the cult favorite way than box office smash. It did respectable numbers, but nowhere near the juggernauts of the time. Over the years, though, its reputation has only grown. What might have felt like an oddball entry back then now stands out as a refreshingly sincere, stylish film in a genre that's often played safe, with a legacy of people appreciating it more because it wasn't trying to be a typical comic book movie. I first watched Hellboy when I was a kid, around the same time I was into stuff like Spawn, Van Helsing, Blade, and it immediately stuck out to me. There was just something about the way it mixed that gothic monster hunting vibe with this almost storybook sense of folklore and myth that really hit. It felt weird and cool in a way I did not know comics or movies could be at the time. I think it actually made me way more open to exploring different kinds of comics and stories outside the usual superhero stuff. Even watching it now, yeah, it's a little rough around the edges, but it's aged quite well. There's also this honest creativity running through it that still makes it feel unique, even with how crowded the genre's gotten. For the rest of the video, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, come back and watch. It all kicks off in 1944 with a Nazi occult ritual on a remote Scottish island. Rasputin, backed by Nazi commandos and his loyal followers, Hopstein and Cronin, tries to summon the Ogdru Jihad, ancient world-ending entities, using a prototype dimensional portal. But before things get out of hand, Professor Trevor Broom and an allied strike team storm the site, destroy the portal, and watch Rasputin get dragged into it. The Nazis escape, but in the aftermath, the soldiers discover something unexpected, a strange red infant with a stone right hand. Instead of killing him, Broom adopts the creature and raises him as a son, a choice that quietly sets the film's main theme in motion. From the start, Hellboy frames its story around nurture, free will, and the idea that even the strangest among us can choose their path. 60 years later, Rasputin's followers resurface and bring him back from the dead, kicking off a new chain of events. We meet John Myers, a young FBI agent assigned to the BPRD, the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, a secret agency dealing with supernatural threats. It's a soft introduction to a world that's already strange and dangerous, where Hellboy works as a field agent alongside Abe Sapien, an empathetic aquatic humanoid. Their latest mission, tracking a creature called Samael, quickly spirals out of control when it's revealed that Samael multiplies every time it dies, turning a monster hunt into a growing nightmare. But beneath the action, Rasputin works from the shadows, trying to twist Hellboy's sense of identity and push him towards unlocking power meant to bring about the apocalypse. Meanwhile, Liz Sherman, Hellboy's former teammate and love interest, struggles with her pyrokinetic abilities and the weight of her past. It's not just another monster of the week there, the story keeps folding back on the tension between destiny, loyalty, and who gets to define you. Everything comes to a head when Cronin infiltrates BPRD headquarters, leading to Broom's death, a moment that hits with more weight than most genre films of its time. Final act sends the team deep into Rasputin's lair, where betrayal, manipulation, and choice collide. Liz torches an entire nest of Samael offspring, Myers proves his worth in an understated but meaningful way, and Rasputin forces Hellboy to confront whether he'll become a destroyer or a protector. Even when Rasputin releases the Behemoth, a spawn of the Ogdru Jihad, Hellboy doesn't rise to the challenge with some grand destiny speech. He lets the thing swallow him and blows it up from the inside out. It's a rough, direct answer to everything Rasputin's been trying to put on him. And when it's all over, the film doesn't linger on some big triumphant note, just Hellboy choosing to stand by the people who believed in him, and finally sharing a hard-earned moment of peace with Liz. The ending of Hellboy is one of mixed feelings. Like, sure, the big bad Rasputin's been taken down and the Behemoth got blown to bits, but the real nightmare, the Ogdru Jihad, are still out there, ancient cosmic forces lurking just beyond our reach. The portal only cracked open briefly, but that was enough to remind you that these aren't your typical monsters. They're the kind of threats that make you feel tiny and powerless in a way that's both terrifying and fascinating. It's like the film is saying, hey, we beat this round, but the universe is still weird, dark, and absolutely enormous, and honestly, that's part of the charm. It leaves the door open for more weirdness, more monsters, and maybe a few more chances for Hellboy to save the day, or at least try. So yeah, it's a little scary, a little hopeful, and all around a perfect way to wrap up a movie that's as much about monster battles as it is about finding your place in a wildly unpredictable world. It is worth quickly touching on what would follow. So after this, we got Hellboy 2, The Golden Army in 2008, Del Toro and Perlman back, bigger budget, more folklore vibes, and honestly, most people think it's even better than the first. Then, nothing for a long time. The 2019 Hellboy reboot with David Harbour tried to go darker and edgier, but it pretty much flopped. Critics trashed it, audiences were not into it, and it kind of vanished overnight. Then there's the 2024 Hellboy, The Crooked Man, which aimed for a smaller, horror-focused reboot closer to Mignola's comics. Early reactions, mixed to decent, mostly from people who wanted something creepier and low-key. So yeah, the Hellboy film world's been a little all over the place, but if you're curious, there's something different in each take depending on what you're into. Honestly, Hellboy isn't perfect, but that's kind of what makes it work. It's this weird mix of pulp, myth, and genuine heart that stuck with me way more than I expected when I first saw it. Even now, it holds up, not because it's some flawless superhero movie, but because it leans into being its own thing. It's rough around the edges, sure, but it's got style, sincerity, and just enough weirdness to make it feel special. Definitely one of those films I'll always have a soft spot for. Now with all that being said, I'm curious what you guys have to say. What did you think of the original Hellboy? Do you think the sequel is better than the original? Are you a fan of the 2019 film? Thanks for making it until the end of the video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Here at Inner Spiral, we cover the games, shows, and movies we all love, so be sure to join us and I'll see you next time in the Spiral.